Hello, my name is Khalil Khan, and today I'll be showing you a presentation on my internship with AB Construction and Modernization. So a little bit about myself. I'm currently a senior at Fresno State University. I was born and raised in Lodi, California, and moved up to go to college in Fresno. I'm going for my bachelor's in construction management, and this summer was my first internship with the construction company. So a little introduction on the projects that I was assigned to this summer. The first project was an Elk Grove housing location, and it was 2,078 square foot for this home. It was a 4-bed, 3-bath, $475,000, and it was a single-story home. The Sacramento house is 2,121 square feet, 4-bed, 3-bath, $490,000, and it was a double-story. And finally, the Lodi housing was 2,690 square feet, 546,000. This was also a 4-bed, 3-bath, and a double story. So the scope of work for these projects varied very minorly. However, they all encompass pretty much the same scope of work. So for the Elk Grove location, there was an existing structure, so we did have to there was a demolition involved in that. However, for the rest of the projects in Lodi and Sacramento, they all involved marking, excavation, MEP, concrete, framing, roofing, trenching, foundation, and finishes, and basically everything from ground up to the final product is what we were in charge of for the construction of these residential homes. So the basic process of how a residential house is completed, step one, as you can see on the top, there is excavation. And then going down to step 2, you would go ahead and lay down your foundation. Step 3 would be any masonry work that would be needed. Step 4 is framing. Step 5 would be roofing / any mechanical, electrical, and plumbing equipment. And step 6 is going to be your exterior and interior finishes. So the common means and method when it came to these projects, because they were your typical residential construction, they were a light wood stick framing with ceiling joists, roof rafters, headers, header joists, and studs. Making sure that we were conforming to all codes and regulations by the city, and proper communication with the engineer was key in order to make sure that we were sticking to the plans and that everything was structurally okay and sound. And so for our projects, the goal was for residential is to complete the projects as soon as possible without hindering anything with quality and safety. So the common materials that you'll see on a housing construction, for the foundation, you would see your normal concrete, rebar, and formwork that would be needed. For framing, you have your lumber and your windows. For plumbing, you have ABS piping and copper piping. Electrical, you have your 14 gauge wiring, your outlets, switches, and breakers. And there were also different gauges of wiring, such as 12 gauge. However, 14 gauge was the most common that I saw for your outlets and switches and etc. And for finishes, you have baseboards, flooring, tiling, painting, and all of these were very common throughout houses that you would see. So some common equipment, because it is residential, there was no specialty equipment unless the plans have called for them. But for the most part, you would see drill, nail guns, ladders, miter saw, a trencher if needed for excavation, measuring tape, trowels, skill saw, your wet saw, and paint sprayer, and many more. So the specific sequence of work that I chose to talk about for my projects is going to be the finishes. And I chose the finishes simply because that is the finished product of what the owner will see after the project is completed, and that is what first catches their eye. So during the scheduling process, you want to make sure the finished products will not get in the way of any other major construction that involves anything that could harm the products that were installed. For example, painting, baseboards, if there was flooring installed already, making sure that none of those goods would be damaged, because at the end of the day, that is what the owner will see and notice. And trying, as I said, trying to schedule it for minimal traffic. And so here I attached some pictures of the projects that we were working on and some of the finishes that were going on. So as you can see here, you got your flooring, your baseboards, lighting fixtures, cabinets, etc. This is also another picture. As you can see here, the flooring, the windows, the painting. These are all very important to making sure nothing else. Here's more tiling. These are all finished product, finishing items, and this is the completion of it. More tiling, cabinets, etc. So for estimating when it comes to projects like these, the software that we used was Bluebeam. It was pretty straightforward because there was nothing that I haven't seen in class that I was able to apply during my internship, which was really awesome. So linear footage was huge for anything that is measured in length, such as baseboard, trim, molding, and plumbing. You could go ahead and use your linear foot takeoff on Bluebeam. And for items like tile, vinyl, painting, flooring, siding, and drywall, you would go ahead and use your square footage, which would give you the area of a designated room on the plans in Bluebeam. And then you would go ahead from there, be able to determine the amount of material you would need. And for each are items that are counted for per item. So items such as lighting fixtures, outlets, switches, fan, faucets, and windows, these are accounted for by piece. And so some of the costs that people tend to forget when it comes to residential construction are going to be your permits and inspections. Inspections are huge in making sure that the quality of the products before you can continue are met with the standards of the city and all codes are met. Also site preparation, making sure if any site prep is needed, temporary utilities if needed, demolition if there's anything existing on the site already, materials, and labor, which labor takes a large chunk of the constructing estimate process. And like I said, it is pretty straightforward for residential when it comes to estimating for materials. Here's an example sheet of a Bluebeam plan, and as you can see here, the red area is highlighted and I got an area of 314 square feet. So using that measurement, I would be able to determine, for example, if we would needed to find out how much flooring would be needed. This would be a great way of getting the exact measurement. So to schedule a project like this, Microsoft Project is what we used. Making sure that all the permits are acquired before you go along with your construction process, and also long lead items and material delivery. So if the owner is asking for a specific item, making sure to see if it's a long lead item and ordering that in advance to make sure that the material delivery will line up with when it will be needed to install. And also material delivery, making sure that material is delivered when needed. Otherwise, this can cause major delays, which if you can mitigate, you will save a lot of time and money on the project. Decreasing the build time as much as possible. The sooner you get out, the less chance for error to occur and possible construction injuries. So by doing this, the faster you get in, the faster you get out, and it's much better and safer. Critical inspections, any inspections that will be needed in order to advance in the construction process. So timing these with your construction crew is key to making sure you can get a smooth transition onto the next phase. And also weather. I know in California it's not that big of an issue. However, it is something that you need to be wary of, and for your worker safety and just making sure that the project won't get hindered by the weather. This is an example of how a schedule would break down for residential. So it starts off with your excavating the site on the top in yellow. Then you prepare your detailed selections, install the footing foundations, you let your foundation cure. Then you can go ahead with the framing, and then it's the plumbing, electrical, HVAC, roofing, insulation, your drywall, and then after that, tile, flooring, install hardwood. Those are going to be your finishes, and those are last with the final inspection and final closing. So key safety procedures, there was fall protection if it was necessary. Scaffold use, making sure that the scaffold was set up correctly and making sure it was inspected before use. Ladder safety was huge. Ladders were used very commonly throughout the site, so making sure there was three-point contact and there was no defects in the ladders that were used. Safety goggles, respirators, making sure material was handled correctly and there was no misuse of them. A bodysuit if necessary when it came to painting and any drywall work. First, there was a first aid kit on site if anything were to happen. And if an accident did occur, there was an accident reporting system that the laborers would have to go through. Gloves, and there were toolbox talks just to keep the workers reminded that there are safety and that they do need to be keeping conscious of what's going around them and just making sure that they are aware of their surroundings and also their other workers alongside them. So for quality assurance and measures, perfection was the goal. However, issues do arise all the time during construction that you are unforeseen. So just trying to make sure that the quality is met with industry and keeping communication open with the owner to make sure that the expectations between both parties are met and that there would be no surprises when it comes to the finished product. Quality for the material was inspected when it was delivered to make sure there were no defects before installation. Performance and inspections. Once again, inspections are a great way of also quality and making sure that everything is going according to plan, and performance inspections to make sure that a product or material is performing as expected before installation. And also site visits were huge because you were able to monitor the project as it was going in real time. So you were able to do a walkthrough and make sure everything was going as accordingly. And like I said, communication with the owner is huge. Keeping open communication and just letting them know how everything is going and also getting their feedback of what their expectations are. And that is the end today for my presentation. Thank you.